She hadn't meant to cry that night. Elise had learned years ago that tears solved nothing. They didn't pay rent. They didn't quiet the landlord's pounding fist on her door at dawn. They didn't make her younger brother's hospital bills disappear or bring back the mother who'd left them both behind with nothing but silence and a stack of unpaid debts. But that night, standing under the flickering streetlight outside the convenience store where she worked double shifts, something inside her finally broke. The man who'd grabbed her wrist had been a customer. He'd smiled at first, polite, ordinary. Then his grip tightened. His words turned sharp. And when she tried to pull away, he'd laughed, a sound that made her skin crawl even now, hours later. Her manager had done nothing. Told her to get back to work. Told her she was overreacting. So she'd finished her shift with bruises blooming purple beneath her sleeve, walked home through streets that smelled of rain and exhaust, and finally let herself break down when no one could see. Except someone did see. Before we go on, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. His car pulled up slow, black and gleaming under the streetlights, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong in her neighborhood. The kind that made people look away. Elise wiped her face quickly, instinct telling her to run. But her legs wouldn't move. Exhaustion had rooted her in place. The door opened. He stepped out, tall, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. Dark hair slicked back, jaw set in a way that suggested he wasn't used to hearing the word no. His name was Konstantin Volkov. She didn't know that yet. All she knew was that when his eyes found hers, something shifted in the air. Something heavy. Something inevitable. He walked toward her slowly, hands in his pockets, gaze never leaving her face. She should have been afraid. Should have turned and run. But there was something about the way he looked at her, not with pity, not with lust, but with a kind of quiet fury that wasn't directed at her at all. He stopped a few feet away. Who touched you? His voice was low, calm, but there was steel beneath it, the kind of steel that could cut through bone. Elise's breath caught. I don't. Your wrist. His eyes dropped to where she was cradling her arm against her chest. Who did that? She could have lied. Should have lied. But something in his gaze made lying feel impossible. A customer, she whispered. At the store. Konstantin's jaw tightened. Just slightly. Enough that she noticed. Show me, he said. It wasn't a request. She hesitated, then slowly pushed up her sleeve. The bruises were dark now, fingerprints etched into her skin like a brand. He stared at them for a long moment. Then he lifted his gaze back to hers. What's your name? Elise. Elise, he repeated, as if committing it to memory. You're going to get in the car. Her heart jumped. No, You're going to get in the car, he said again, softer this time, because in about 10 minutes, this street is going to be very loud, and you don't want to be here when it is. She didn't understand, didn't want to understand, but when he stepped aside and gestured toward the open door, she found herself moving. Found herself climbing into the back seat, into leather that smelled like expensive cologne and danger. He closed the door behind her, got into the driver's seat, pulled away from the curb without another word. Elise sat frozen, watching the familiar streets blur past the window. She should have been terrified, should have been screaming, but instead, she felt something else. Safe. For the first time in years, she felt safe. It was only later, much later, that she would learn what happened that night. How Konstantin had made a single phone call. How 20 men in black cars had arrived at the convenience store within the hour. How her manager had been dragged from his home and made to watch as the man who'd touched her was found, questioned, and taught a lesson he would never forget. How by midnight, every officer in the city who owed Konstantin a favor, or feared him enough not to refuse, had shown up at his door, asking what they could do to make the problem disappear. But in that moment, driving through the rain-slicked streets, Elise knew none of that. All she knew was that her life had just changed, and there was no going back. He took her to a house on the edge of the city. Not a house, really. An estate. Iron gates that opened without him pressing a button, a long driveway lined with trees older than her grandmother would have been, and at the end of it all, a structure of glass and stone that looked like it belonged in a dream. Or a nightmare. Elise sat in silence as he parked, as he opened her door, as he led her inside without explanation. She followed because she didn't know what else to do. Because going back to her apartment, to the leaking ceiling and the unpaid bills and the brother who needed medicine she couldn't afford, felt impossible now. The inside of the house was quiet. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of control. Everything in its place. Everything deliberate. Constantine led her to a room on the second floor, opened the door, gestured for her to enter. It was bigger than her entire apartment. A bed with white sheets, a window overlooking the gardens, a bathroom she could see through a half-open door, all marble and gold fixtures. "You'll stay here," he said. Not a question. Never a question with him. Elise turned to face him, confusion and fear warring in her chest. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of smoke on his clothes, see the tiny scar above his left eyebrow. "Because no one else will," he said simply. And then he left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. She heard the lock turn. That was when the fear finally came. She was trapped. The days that followed were strange, dreamlike. She woke to sunlight streaming through windows she hadn't opened, to the smell of coffee brewing somewhere downstairs. There was always food waiting for her, fresh bread, fruit, eggs cooked perfectly even though she never saw anyone cooking them. She tried the door once, found it unlocked. But where would she go? Back to the apartment where the landlord was waiting? Back to the store where her manager would tell her to forget what happened, to move on, to stop causing trouble? So she stayed. Constantine appeared each evening. Never for long. He would sit in the chair by the window while she perched on the edge of the bed, and he would ask her questions. Simple ones at first. "Did you eat today? Are you comfortable? Do you need anything?" She answered carefully, unsure what he wanted from her, unsure what this was. On the fifth night, he asked something different. "Tell me about your brother." Her breath caught. "How do you?" "I know everything about you, Elise." His voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "I know about the hospital bills, the medications he needs, the mother who left. I know you've been working 3 jobs and still falling behind." Shame burned in her chest. "Why does that matter to you?" He leaned forward slightly. "Because it matters to you." She didn't know how to respond to that. "His name is Daniel," she said finally. "He's 12. He has a condition, his lungs. He needs treatments twice a week, medications I can barely afford. Our mother couldn't handle it, so she left." "And your father?" "Never met him." Constantine nodded slowly, as if filing this information away. "The hospital bills will be taken care of." She blinked. "What?" "I've already made arrangements. Daniel will receive the best care available. You won't have to worry about it anymore." Taze pricked her eyes. I can't accept that. I don't even know you." "You know enough." "I don't know anything," she said, voice rising. "I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know what you want from me. I don't even know what you are." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "What do you think I am?" She met his gaze. "Dangerous." "Yes." No hesitation. No denial. "Then why?" "Because someone hurt you," he said, and there was that steel again, that quiet fury. "And people who hurt the innocent don't get to walk away." She stayed at him, heart pounding. "What did you do?" He stood, smoothing his jacket. "Nothing you need to think about." "Constantine." "Sleep," he said, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow, I'll take you to see your brother." And then he was gone again, leaving her alone with questions that had no answers and a strange, aching feeling in her chest that she couldn't name. She saw Daniel the next morning. Constantine drove her to the hospital himself, didn't say much during the ride. When they arrived, she noticed the way the staff looked at him, with respect, yes, but also with fear. They moved quickly to accommodate him, led them to a private room where her brother was sitting up in bed, looking healthier than she'd seen him in months. Daniel's face lit up when he saw her. Elise. She rushed to his side, wrapped her arms around him carefully, felt tears streaming down her face. Hey, little man, how are you feeling? Better, he said, grinning. The doctor said the new treatment is working. They said I might be able to go home soon. She glanced at Constantine, who stood by the door, watching them with an expression she couldn't read. That's wonderful, she whispered, smoothing Daniel's hair. That's so wonderful. They stayed for an hour. She read to him from a book one of the nurses had brought, laughed at his jokes, pretended everything was normal. Pretended she wasn't living in a stranger's house under circumstances she didn't understand. When they left, Daniel called out to Constantine. Thank you, mister. Constantine paused, looked back at the boy. For what? For helping my sister. She never asks for help. So thank you. Something flickered across Constantine's face. Something almost soft. Take care of yourself, he said quietly, and then they were leaving, walking back through halls that smelled of antiseptic and sadness. In the car, Elise finally spoke. Why are you really doing this? He kept his eyes on the road. I told you. No, she interrupted. There's more. There has to be. People like you don't just help people like me. A long silence. Then, I had a sister once. Elise's breath stilled. Had. She was younger than me. Sweet. Innocent. Everything I wasn't. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. One night, someone hurt her. I wasn't there to stop it. By the time I found out, it was too late. Constantine. I've spent every day since making sure no one else gets away with it, he continued, voice low and hard. Every man who thinks he can take what he wants. Every person who believes the innocent don't matter. I make them regret it. She understood then. The fury in his eyes that first night. The way he'd looked at her bruises. The swift, brutal justice he'd delivered without hesitation. He wasn't saving her. He was avenging someone he'd already lost. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be sorry. He finally looked at her. Just let me keep you safe. And in that moment, despite everything, despite the fear, the confusion, the knowledge that this man was dangerous, she found herself nodding. If this story has already found a place in your heart, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more stories that stay long after they end. The weeks passed like water through cupped hands. Elise stopped trying to leave. Stopped questioning why. She woke each morning in that too-big bed, ate breakfast in a kitchen that was always somehow stocked with her favorite foods, spent her days reading books from Constantine's library or walking through the gardens where roses bloomed even in the cold. He was gone most days. Business, he said, though he never elaborated. She didn't ask. But every evening, he returned. And every evening, they sat together, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking about nothing important, sometimes sharing pieces of themselves they'd never shared with anyone else. She learned that he took his coffee black, that he'd taught himself to play piano but never performed for anyone, that he had scars on his back from a childhood he refused to discuss. He learned that she loved thunderstorms, that she'd wanted to be a teacher before life got in the way, that she sang when she thought no one was listening. Slowly, something shifted between them. The fear faded, the distance narrowed, and one night, when he reached across the space between them and gently took her hand in his, she didn't pull away. His touch was warm, steady, safe. You don't have to stay here, he said softly. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. She looked down at their joined hands. What if I don't want to leave? He lifted her chin with his free hand, forced her to meet his gaze. Then stay. Why? Because I'm selfish, he admitted. Because having you here makes this house feel less empty. Because when I look at you, I remember why I do what I do. Her heart was racing. And what is that? To protect the things that matter. She leaned forward without thinking, closed the distance between them until their foreheads touched. I'm afraid, she whispered. Of me. Of what I'm starting to feel. His thumb brushed across her cheek. Don't be. And then, slowly, carefully, he kissed her. It was gentle, reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid might break. When he pulled back, her eyes were closed, her breath uneven. Stay, he said again. She opened her eyes. I will. The world outside Constantine's gates continued without her. She knew this because sometimes, late at night, she would sit by the window and watch the distant city lights, wonder what her old life looked like now. The apartment she'd abandoned, the jobs she'd never returned to, the friends she hadn't contacted. It all felt like it belonged to someone else now. Someone who didn't wake up in silk sheets. Someone who didn't have her brother's medical bills paid in full. Someone who didn't fall asleep each night with the memory of Constantine's kiss still warm on her lips. He'd kissed her again since that first time. Many times. Sometimes soft and searching, like he was trying to memorize the shape of her. Sometimes desperate, like he was afraid she might disappear if he didn't hold on tight enough. She'd started kissing him back started seeking out his presence during the day, finding excuses to be near him when he was home. Started falling asleep on the couch in his study while he worked, only to wake up hours later in her bed with no memory of how she'd gotten there. He never pushed for more, never asked for anything she wasn't ready to give. And somehow, that made her want to give him everything. One afternoon, she found herself in his office while he was on the phone. His voice was low, clipped, speaking in a language she didn't recognize. When he hung up, he looked tired in a way she'd never seen before. Bad day, she asked softly. He glanced at her, surprised. He hadn't noticed her enter. Complicated day. She moved closer, perched on the edge of his desk. Want to talk about it? A faint smile. I don't think you want to hear about my work. Try me. He studied her for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. There's a man. He owes me money, a significant amount. He's decided he'd rather run than pay. What will you do? Find him. Make him understand that running was a mistake. The casualness in his voice should have frightened her, should have reminded her of what he was, not just dangerous, but deadly. Instead, she found herself asking, will you hurt him? Only if he makes me. She nodded slowly. And if he doesn't, then he'll walk away with a warning and his debt paid. Constantine's gaze softened. I'm not a monster, Elise. I just can't afford to appear weak. I don't think you're a monster, she said quietly. No. No. She slid off the desk, moved around to his side, placed her hands on his shoulders. I think you're someone who was hurt badly enough that you built walls no one could climb. His jaw tensed. And you think you can climb them? I don't think I need to. She leaned down, pressed a kiss to the top of his head. I think you opened the gate for me. He reached up, caught one of her hands in his, brought it to his lips. You make it sound romantic. Isn't it? It's dangerous. Maybe I like dangerous. He pulled her around, into his lap, held her close. You shouldn't. Too late. She kissed him then, deep and slow, and felt his arms tighten around her. Felt the way his control wavered, just for a moment, before he pulled back. Elise, he murmured against her mouth. If we keep doing this. Then keep doing this, she interrupted. I'm not afraid anymore. You should be. But I'm not. He searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Found none. All right, he said finally. But not here. Not like this. She didn't understand until he stood, lifting her with him, carrying her out of the office and up the stairs to his room, a space she'd never entered before. It was dark, masculine, exactly what she'd expected. He set her down gently on the bed, brushed her hair back from her face. If you want to stop. I don't. If you want me to slow down. Constantine, she said firmly. I want this. I want you. Something in his expression cracked. The carefully maintained control. The distance he kept between himself and the world. It all fell away. And when he kissed her again, it wasn't gentle or careful. It was consuming. If you've ever felt torn between fear and love, you'll understand her. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Your support keeps stories like this alive. She lost track of time after that. Lost track of everything except the feel of his hands on her skin, the weight of him above her, the way he whispered her name like a prayer. He was careful even in his passion, checking in with her, making sure she was okay, making sure she wanted every touch, every kiss, every moment. And she did. God, she did. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the dark, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. I never thought I'd feel this way again, he admitted quietly. Feel what way? Like I have something to lose. She lifted her head to look at him. You won't lose me. You can't promise that. I can promise I won't leave willingly. He pulled her closer. Then I'll make sure nothing takes you unwillingly. It should have sounded possessive, overbearing. Instead, it sounded like love. 3 months passed. 3 months of mornings waking up beside him, of learning the rhythms of his life, of finding her place in a world she never imagined she'd be part of. Daniel came home from the hospital. Constantine had arranged for a private nurse, for all the equipment he needed, for a room in the East Wing where sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her brother thrived there. So did she. But nothing good lasts forever. She should have known that. Should have remembered that fairy tales don't exist in the real world, and men like Constantine don't get happy endings. The trouble started on a Tuesday. She was in the garden when she heard the cars arrive. Multiple vehicles, engines roaring, tires screeching on gravel. She looked up to see men pouring out, armed, moving with military precision toward the house. Her blood ran cold. She ran, found Constantine in his study, already on his feet, phoned to his ear, barking orders in that language she didn't understand. What's happening? She demanded. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For her. You need to hide, he said. Now. What? There's a room. Behind the bookshelf on the east wall. Get Daniel and go there. Don't come out until I come for you. Constantine, I'm not leaving you. Elise. He grabbed her shoulders, forced her to focus. I need you safe. I need to know you're safe. Please. She wanted to argue, wanted to stay by his side, to face whatever was coming together. But the look in his eyes stopped her. She nodded, ran, found Daniel in his room, explained in a rush that they needed to move, needed to hide. He didn't argue, just took her hand and let her lead him through holes she'd memorized over months of wondering. The bookshelf swung open when she pressed the right spot. Behind it, a small room, soundproofed, stocked with supplies, a safe room. She pulled Daniel inside, closed the door, held him close as the sounds of chaos erupted outside. Gunfire, shouting, glass breaking. She pressed her hands over Daniel's ears, tried to shield him from the violence, tried not to imagine what was happening to Constantine. If your heart's racing too, take a breath, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more unforgettable love stories. The silence afterward was somehow worse than the noise. She waited, counted seconds that turned into minutes that turned into hours. Daniel had fallen asleep against her shoulder, exhausted by fear and uncertainty. She stroked his hair, stared at the door, and prayed. When the door finally opened, she nearly screamed. But it was Constantine. Alive. Blooded, but alive. She launched herself at him, wrapped her arms around him, felt tears streaming down her face. I thought. I'm here, he murmured into her hair. I'm here. It's over. What happened? Rivals. They thought they could take what's mine. His arms tightened around her. They were wrong. She pulled back to look at him. There was blood on his shirt, a cut above his eye, bruises forming on his jaw. But he was steady, unbroken. Are they gone? They won't be coming back. She nodded, didn't ask for details she didn't want to know. We need to leave, Constantine said. This house isn't safe anymore. I have another place, farther from the city, more secure. Okay. Okay. Wherever you go, I go. He cupped her face in his hands. You could leave. You could take Daniel and disappear. I'd make sure you had enough money, enough protection. No. Elise. No, she said again, firmer this time. I'm not running. Not from you. Not from this life. I chose you, Constantine. I choose you every day. Something broke in his expression. Relief, gratitude, love. He kissed her hard, desperate, like she was air and he was drowning. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she agreed with a shaky laugh. But you're stuck with me anyway. Good. He kissed her again, softer this time, because I'm never letting you go. They left that night, packed what little mattered, clothes, Daniel's medications, a few books, and drove through darkness to a place Constantine promised was safer. It was a cabin in the mountains, remote, beautiful, surrounded by trees and silence. A new beginning. Daniel fell asleep in the car. Constantine carried him inside, laid him gently on one of the beds, covered him with blankets. Then he found Elise standing on the porch, looking out at the stars. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking? That I should be scared, she admitted. That I should be running. But I'm not. Why not? Because being with you feels more like home than anywhere I've ever been. He turned her in his arms, kissed her forehead, then welcome home. And standing there under the night sky, far from the chaos and violence of the world he'd built, Elise finally understood the truth. Love wasn't always safe. Sometimes it was dangerous, complicated, born from trauma and desperation. But it was still love. And that was enough. The cabin became their sanctuary. Days fell into a rhythm unlike anything Elise had known. She woke to the smell of pine trees and coffee, to Constantine already awake beside her, watching her sleep with an expression that made her heart ache. Daniel grew stronger in the mountain air. The nurse Constantine had hired visited twice a week, declared him improving steadily, suggested that within a year he might not need treatments at all. Hope became a tangible thing again. But peace was fragile in Constantine's world. She learned this gradually, through the phone calls he took outside, through the tension that would sometimes settle in his shoulders when messages came through on his encrypted phone, through the men who occasionally appeared at their door, polite, deferential, but armed. He tried to shield her from it. She let him, because she understood now that this was how he showed love, through protection, through control, through making sure the darkness of his world never quite reached her. But one evening, she found him standing at the window, staring out at nothing, his jaw tight with worry. Talk to me, she said softly. He didn't turn. There's a situation. In the city. What kind of situation? The kind that could spread here if I'm not careful. She moved to stand beside him. Can you fix it? I always fix it. But at what cost? He finally looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, how much of yourself do you give away every time you have to be that person? She touched his face gently. The man who fixes everything, who protects everyone, who never lets himself be weak. His throat worked. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not me. He turned away again. The moment I show weakness, the moment I let my guard down, people I love get hurt. Your sister. Yes. Constantine, she said carefully, you can't save everyone. You couldn't save her, and that's tragic, but it doesn't mean you have to carry the weight of the world alone. Who else will carry it? Let me help. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You can't help with this. Why not? Because I need you safe, he said fiercely. I need you untouched by the things I do, the choices I make. You and Daniel, you're the only good things in my life. I won't let my world corrupt that. She understood then. The distance he sometimes kept. The walls he'd never quite taken down completely. He wasn't protecting her from danger. He was protecting her from himself. I'm stronger than you think, she said. I know you are. Then stop pushing me away when things get hard. He was silent for a long moment. Then, there's a meeting tomorrow. In the city. People who want to challenge my authority. People who think the fact that I've been distracted means I'm weak. Are you going? I have to. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Constantine. No, Elise. This isn't a negotiation. These are dangerous people. If they knew about you, if they thought they could use you against me. He stopped, unable to finish the thought. She took his hand. I'm already in danger by being with you. At least if I'm there, I can see what you're up against. You'll stay in the car. Fine. And you'll do exactly what I say. Okay. He studied her suspiciously. You're agreeing too easily. She smiled. Maybe I just trust you to keep me safe. He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. I will. I swear I will. Before we close this chapter, take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Every small gesture helps the next story find its way to you. The drive to the city the next day was tense. Constantine had been quiet all morning, his jaw set in that way that meant he was preparing for battle. 2 cars followed them. Security, he'd explained, though he'd made it clear she wasn't to acknowledge their presence. They arrived at a warehouse on the industrial edge of town. Empty. Cold. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Stay here, Constantine said, putting the car in park. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Be careful, she whispered. He kissed her, quick and hard. Always. Then he was gone, disappearing into the building with confidence that both reassured and terrified her. She waited, watched the minutes tick by on the dashboard clock, tried not to imagine what was happening inside. And then she heard it. Gunfire. Her heart stopped. She grabbed for the door handle before remembering his instructions. Lock the doors. Don't open them. But what if he needed help? What if? The passenger door opened suddenly. She screamed, twisted to defend herself, and found Constantine sliding into the seat, blood on his hands, his breathing ragged. Drive, he said. What? Drive. She scrambled over the console into the driver's seat, threw the car into gear, and floored it. Behind them, men poured out of the warehouse, shouting, raising weapons. Constantine's hand found hers on the gear shift. Faster. She drove like she'd never driven before, weaving through streets, running lights, not caring about traffic laws or consequences. All that mattered was getting them away. Are you hurt? She asked, voice shaking. Not my blood. What happened? They tried to kill me. They failed. His grip on her hand tightened. They won't try again. She didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. They drove for hours, lost the tail somewhere around the state line, kept going until Constantine finally told her to pull over at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. She killed the engine, turned to him. Are we safe? He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. You drove like a demon back there. I was terrified. You were incredible. He reached over, tucked her hair behind her ear. Thank you. For what? For not running when you had the chance. I'll never run from you, she said simply. He kissed her then, slow and deep, tasting like relief and adrenaline and something else she couldn't name. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Let's go home. The cabin. Yes, and let's stay there for a very long time. She smiled. I'd like that. They didn't return to the city after that. Constantine made his peace with distance, with ruling his empire through phone calls and encrypted messages, with letting his lieutenants handle the day-to-day operations he once would have controlled himself. He chose her over it, over everything. Elise watched him change slowly, watched the tension leave his shoulders, watched him smile more easily, watched him play chess with Daniel in the evenings and lose on purpose just to see her brother's face light up. This was who he could have been, she thought sometimes. If life had been kinder, if trauma hadn't forged him into something hard and dangerous. But she loved him anyway, loved both versions of him, the ruthless man who'd saved her, and the gentle one who held her at night and whispered promises in the dark. Winter came early that year. Snow blanketed the mountains, turned the world white and quiet. They were snowed in for days at a time, cut off from everything except each other. Elise didn't mind. She taught Daniel mathematics in the mornings, read him stories in the afternoons, watched Constantine teach him how to build fires and chop wood and survive in the wilderness. Practical skills, Constantine had said when she'd raised an eyebrow. You're teaching a 12-year-old to be a survivalist. I'm teaching him to be prepared. She'd just shaken her head, smiling. One night, after Daniel had gone to bed, Constantine found her sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. What are you thinking about? He asked, settling beside her. The future, she admitted. What about it? Whether this can last, whether we can really just exist here, separate from everything you were. He was quiet for a moment. Do you want to leave? No. She turned to face him. But I wonder sometimes if you're giving up too much. If you resent me for it. Never, he said fiercely. You gave me a life I thought I'd lost. A reason to be something other than what I was made into. And what were you made into? A weapon. The honesty of it hit her hard. You're not just that. I am. He took her hand. But with you, I get to be something more. Something better. She leaned against him, let him wrap his arm around her. I love you. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. His breath caught. Say it again. I love you, Constantine. He tilted her chin up, kissed her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. I love you too, more than I thought I was capable of. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in warmth and silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. And Elise let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they really could have this. Forever. Spring arrived slowly, melting the snow, bringing green back to the world. With it came change. Daniel's health continued improving. The nurse declared him stable, suggested reducing his treatments. He was thriving in ways Elise had never dared hope for. Constantine had been quietly working on something. She could tell by the way he'd spend hours on his computer, making calls, speaking in that careful tone he used when negotiating. She didn't ask. Had learned to let him keep his secrets when they didn't endanger them. But one morning, he found her in the garden and said, I have something to show you. She followed him to the car, curious. They drove for an hour, deeper into the mountains, until they reached a property she'd never seen before. A house, bigger than the cabin, but still remote, surrounded by land that stretched as far as she could see. What is this? She asked. Ours, he said simply, if you want it. She stared at him. You bought this. I had it built. The deed is in your name. And Daniel's. Constantine. I wanted you to have something that's yours, that no one can take from you, that will exist even if. He stopped, jaw tight. Even if what? Even if something happens to me. Fear lanced through her. Nothing's going to happen to you. You can't know that. Then don't make it sound like you're planning for it. He pulled her close. I'm not planning for it. I'm planning for you to be safe, no matter what. She held him tight, tried to ignore the cold dread settling in her stomach. Show me the house. It was beautiful, light and open, with windows overlooking the mountains, a huge kitchen where she could imagine cooking meals, bedrooms for all of them, a study where Constantine could work. There's something else, he said, leading her to the back of the property. A workshop, fully equipped with tools, materials, space to create. I know you wanted to be a teacher, he said quietly, but I also know you like to build things, fix things. So I thought maybe you'd want a place to do that. Tejas pricked her eyes. You remember that? I remember everything you've ever told me. She turned to him, threw her arms around his neck. It's perfect. You're perfect. I'm not. You are to me. He kissed her deeply, poured everything he felt into it, and she kissed him back just as fiercely. Let's move in, she whispered against his lips. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. So they did. Spent weeks transferring their lives from the cabin to the house, making it theirs. Constantine commissioned furniture. Elise filled the rooms with books and warmth. Daniel claimed the biggest bedroom and decorated it with posters and drawings. It felt like home. Real home. The kind neither Constantine nor Elise had ever known. And for a while, a brief, beautiful while, they were happy. 6 months passed in peace. 6 months of mornings watching the sunrise from their bedroom window, of afternoons spent working in the garden, of evenings gathered around the dinner table like a real family. Daniel had started attending school online. Constantine had arranged for the best tutors, made sure he had everything he needed to thrive. Elise had turned the workshop into her sanctuary. She'd started building furniture, small pieces at first, then larger projects. Constantine had bought her every tool she'd even hinted at wanting, watched her work with an expression of quiet pride. You could sell these, he'd said once, running his hand over a table she'd finished. Maybe someday, she'd replied. Right now, I'm just enjoying creating something that's mine. He'd understood, had kissed her temple and left her to her work. But peace, Elise was learning, was always temporary. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a phone call Constantine took late one night. She'd woken to find him standing on the balcony, speaking in rapid, tense sentences. When he came back to bed, she'd asked, Is everything okay? It will be. She'd wanted to press, but the look in his eyes had stopped her. The second sign came a week later. Strange cars on the road leading to their property. Nothing overt, nothing obvious, but Constantine had noticed. Had increased security without explanation. The third sign was the news report. She'd been watching television while Constantine was in his study, had seen the headline flash across the screen. Asterisk notorious crime figure found dead in apparent ambush star. She'd recognized the name. One of Constantine's rivals. The reporter suggested it was a power struggle. That someone was making a move. She'd turned off the TV with shaking hands. When Constantine emerged hours later, she'd asked, Is it starting again? He hadn't needed to ask what she meant. Yes. What are you going to do? What I always do. End it before it reaches you. And if you can't? He'd knelt in front of her, taken her hands in his. Then I want you to take Daniel and go. There's a place, coordinates I've given you. Money, documents, everything you'd need to disappear. I'm not leaving you. If I tell you to run, you run. No, Elise. I said no. She'd cupped his face, forced him to look at her. We survive this together or not at all. He'd closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. You're going to be the death of me. Then die knowing you were loved. He'd kissed her then, desperate and aching, and she'd kissed him back with everything she had. The storm broke 3 days later. She was working in the garden with Daniel when the first shot rang out. She hit the ground instinctively, pulled Daniel down with her, covered his body with haze as more gunfire erupted around them. "Stay down," she hissed. "Don't move." Constantine appeared from nowhere, grabbed them both, hauled them toward the house. His security team was returning fire, creating cover, buying them seconds they desperately needed. Inside, he shoved them toward the safe room he'd built into the basement. "Go. Now." "You're coming with us," Elise demanded. "I'll be right behind you." "Constantine." "Go." She went, dragged Daniel down the stairs, into the room, slammed the door shut, heard the lock engage automatically, and then she waited. The sounds above were muffled but unmistakable. Fighting. Shouting. More gunfire. Daniel was crying. She held him, tried to be strong, tried not to imagine Constantine bleeding out upstairs while she hid. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like eternity. When silence finally fell, she didn't know if it was a good sign or a death knell. The door opened. Constantine stood there, alive but battered. Blood on his shirt, a cut across his cheek, but alive. She launched herself at him, checked him frantically for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "Nothing serious. It's over." "Are they?" "Dead or gone. My men are doing cleanup." She pulled back to look at him. "This has to stop." "I know. I mean it, Constantine. I can't keep living like this. Daniel can't. We deserve better." "I know," he said again, more quietly. "And you'll have it." "How?" He took her hands. "There's a way out, a way to leave this life completely. But it would mean giving up everything I've built, everything I am. And I'm ready to do it. For you. For him." He glanced at Daniel, who was watching them with wide, frightened eyes. "For us." Hope bloomed painful and bright in her chest. "You mean it?" "Every word." "When?" "Soon. I have to make arrangements, secure a few things, but soon." She threw her arms around him, held him as tightly as she could. "Promise me." "I promise." And in that moment, covered in doubt and fear and the aftermath of violence, Elise let herself believe him. Let herself believe they really could escape. Constantine kept his word. Over the following weeks, she watched him systematically dismantle the empire he'd spent years building. Watched him transfer assets, sell properties, cut ties with associates who'd once been vital to his operations. He did it all quietly, carefully, making sure no loose ends remained. "It has to be complete," he explained one night. "If I leave anything unfinished, someone will try to use it against us." "How long?" she asked. "A month, maybe less." She could live with that. They made plans. Constantine showed her documents for new identities, not just for them, but for Daniel too. Showed her the account numbers where he'd been transferring money, enough to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. "Where will we go?" she asked. "Wherever you want." "What do you want?" He thought about it. "Somewhere quiet. Near the ocean. Maybe. Somewhere no one knows my name." She smiled. "That sounds perfect." Daniel, when they told him, took it surprisingly well. "So we'd just disappear?" he asked. "Yes," Constantine said. "New names, new lives. No more looking over our shoulders. And we'd be safe. You'd be safe." Daniel looked at Elise. "You want this?" "More than anything." He nodded slowly. "Then okay, let's do it." The relief Elise felt was overwhelming. They spent the remaining weeks preparing. Constantine taught them both skills they'd need: how to disappear in a crowd, how to spot surveillance, how to use emergency protocols if they were ever separated. "I hope you never need any of this," he said, "but I need to know you're prepared." Elise learned. memorized everything he taught her, practiced until her hands stopped shaking when she handled the gun he insisted she keep. "I still don't like this," she admitted one day at the range he'd built on their property. "You don't have to like it. You just have to know how." She sighed but kept practicing. 3 weeks in, Constantine came home with plane tickets. "Greece," he said. "Small island. Minimal tourism. I've already purchased a house there under our new names." "When do we leave?" "1 week." Her heart soared. 1 week. 1 week, he confirmed, pulling her close. "And then this is all over. We get to be normal." She laughed. "I don't think we'll ever be normal." "No," he agreed, kissing her forehead. "But we can try." The final week passed in a blur of preparations and goodbyes, not to people, but to the life they were leaving behind. Elise walked through the house they'd built, memorizing every room, every corner, every space where they'd been happy. "We'll build another one," Constantine promised. "Even better." She believed him. 2 days before they were set to leave, Constantine had one final meeting. Someone from his old life who needed to be paid off, to ensure their silence. "I'll be back in a few hours," he told her. "Stay inside. Security's doubled. You'll be safe." She kissed him. "Be careful." "Always." He left. She tried to distract herself. Played cards with Daniel. Packed the last few items they'd take with them. Checked her watch every 10 minutes. 3 hours passed. Then 4. Then 5. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered with shaking hands. "Hello. Is this Elise?" A man's voice. Cold. Unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "A friend. I have Constantine." Her blood turned to ice. "If you hurt him." "He's alive. For now. Whether he stays that way depends on you." "What do you want?" "Everything has been liquidating. Every account. Every asset. Transfer it all to me, and you get him back." "I don't have access to." "Don't lie to me," the voice snapped. "He gave you everything." "I know he did. You have 72 hours to comply. After that, he dies." The line went dead. Elise stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, mind racing. She could comply. Transfer everything. Save Constantine. But then they'd have nothing. No safety net. No new life. And worse, this man would know she'd give anything for Constantine. Would know exactly how to control her. She looked at Daniel, who was watching her with growing fear. "What happened?" he asked. "Someone took Constantine." "What are we going to do?" She took a breath. Made a decision. "We're going to get him back." She spent the first hour making calls. Constantine's security team. His most trusted lieutenant, a man named Victor who'd been with him for decades. People who owed him favors, who'd risk their lives for him without question. "I need to know where he is," she told Victor. "And I need to know now." "We're already looking." "Look harder." Her voice was steel. "Someone in your organization knows something. Find them. Make them talk." "With respect, Elise, this isn't your world." "It became my world the moment I fell in love with him," she interrupted. "Now either help me or get out of my way." A pause. Then, "I'll call you back in an hour." She used that hour to access Constantine's files. The ones he'd shown her, taught her to use in case of emergency. Account numbers. Contacts. Information that could buy armies or destroy empires. She found the tracking app he'd installed on his phone. It showed his last known location, an abandoned factory on the industrial edge of the city. Of course, these men had no imagination. When Victor called back, she was already loading guns into a duffel bag. "We have a location," he said. "But Elise, you can't go in there. These are professionals. They'll kill you without hesitation." "Then I won't hesitate either." "Let us handle this." "No, I'm going. You and your men will provide support." But this is my operation. Another pause. Longer this time. Constantine taught you well, Victor said finally. He taught me to survive. Now help me save him. They met 2 hours later at a location halfway to the factory. Victor had brought 20 men, all armed, all loyal. The plan? He asked. Elise spread out blueprints of the factory Constantine's files had provided. They are expecting either total compliance or an attack. We give them neither. Explain. I'm going in alone, unarmed. I'll offer to negotiate. That's suicide. No, that's distraction. She pointed to the blueprint. While they are focused on me, your men infiltrate through these entry points. You have 10 minutes to get into position before I make contact. Victor studied her. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. They moved out. Elise left Daniel with Constantine's most trusted guard, made him promise to take care of her brother if things went wrong. They won't, she said, trying to convince herself as much as him. I'll be back. The factory loomed dark and abandoned when they arrived. Victor's men melted into the shadows, taking positions. Elise waited the full 10 minutes, counting seconds, controlling her breathing. Then she walked to the front entrance and knocked. A man opened the door, armed, suspicious. I'm here to talk, Elise said calmly. About what? About giving you what you want. I need to see Constantine first. Make sure he's alive. The man studied her, then spoke into a radio. A moment later, come in. She walked into darkness. The interior of the factory was vast, filled with shadows and rusted machinery. Men with guns stood at intervals, watching her carefully. She kept her hands visible, her pace steady. They led her to the center of the space. Constantine was there, tied to a chair, beaten but conscious. His eyes widened when he saw her. Elise, no. Quiet, the man beside him said, pressing a gun to Constantine's head. Elise forced herself to look away from Constantine, to focus on the man in charge. Older, well-dressed, someone who'd clearly been doing this a long time. You have the access codes, he asked. I do. Then transfer everything. Now. She pulled out her phone slowly, opened the banking app Constantine had shown her how to use. This will take a few minutes, she said. You have 5. She started the transfers and signaled Victor. The explosion came from the east wall, controlled, calculated, exactly as planned. Men scattered, shouting, running toward the disturbance. Elise dropped, rolled, came up with the gun she'd hidden in her boot. Shot the man holding Constantine before he could react. Victor's team poured in from all sides, engaging the scattered enemies. Gunfire erupted. Chaos reigned. Elise ran to Constantine, cut his bonds with a knife from her pocket. Can you walk? Yes. He grabbed her face, kissed her hard. You're insane. You love me anyway. God help me, I do. They ran. Victor's men provided cover, fighting a retreat toward the exits. Elise kept her gun raised, fired when she needed to, kept moving forward. They burst out into the night air, into waiting vehicles, into escape. Drive! Elise shouted. They drove. Behind them, the factory lit up with more explosions, Victor making sure no evidence remained, no witnesses survived to come after them again. Where to? The driver asked. Elise looked at Constantine. The airport. Our flight leaves in 3 hours. We don't have our things. We don't need them. We have each other. We have Daniel. That's all that matters. He pulled her close, kissed her again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to. Don't, she interrupted. Don't apologize for me choosing to save you. I'd do it again. 1,000 times. I know you would. He rested his forehead against hers. That's what terrifies me. She smiled despite everything. Get used to it. They picked up Daniel and the guard who'd been protecting him, made it to the airport with an hour to spare, boarded the plane using their new identities, new names, new lives. As the plane lifted off, Elise held Constantine's hand and watched their old life disappear beneath the clouds. "No more," she said quietly. "No more," he agreed. And this time, she believed it. Greece was everything Constantine had promised. White buildings against blue water, sun that warmed without burning. A small house on a hillside overlooking the sea, far enough from town that they could exist in peace. They arrived exhausted, traumatized, but alive. The first week was spent sleeping, recovering. Daniel's health had held up remarkably well through the chaos, but he needed rest as much as they did. Gradually, they began to build again. Constantine, who'd been ruthless and powerful, learned to cook, learned to fish, learned to fix things around the house with his hands instead of making phone calls to people who'd do it for him. Elise watched him transform from the man he'd been forced to become into someone softer, someone who smiled more easily, someone who could sit on the beach at sunset and not be constantly scanning for threats. Daniel thrived. The sea air agreed with him. He'd started attending the local school, making friends who knew nothing about their past. He learned Greek quickly, came home each day with new words and stories about his classmates. "He's happy," Constantine observed one evening, watching Daniel play with neighborhood children on the beach below their house. "So are you," Elise said. He looked at her. "Am I? Aren't you?" He considered this. "I'm at peace. I'm not sure I know how to be happy." "Then learn." He smiled. "Teach me." So she did. They established routines. Morning coffee on the terrace. Afternoon swims in the sea. Evening walks through town, anonymous and ordinary. Constantine grew a beard. Let his hair grow longer. Started wearing simple clothes instead of expensive suits. No one recognized him. No one even looked at him. He was just another expatriate, another person seeking peace in paradise. Months passed. Then a year. Then 2. Elise started teaching English at the local school. Constantine took up carpentry, built furniture for their home and for neighbors who asked. Daniel grew taller, healthier, more confident. They became part of the community. People knew them as the quiet family on the hill. The ones who kept to themselves but were always kind, always helpful when needed. No one knew about the violence that had brought them there. No one knew about the empire Constantine had abandoned. And slowly, even they began to forget. One night, lying in bed with moonlight streaming through the window, Elise asked, "Do you miss it?" "Miss what?" "The power, the control, being someone people feared." Constantine was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes I miss feeling useful, feeling like I mattered." "You matter, hey." "I know." He pulled her closer, but in a different way, a smaller way. "Is that bad?" "No." He kissed her forehead. "It's perfect. I just have to keep reminding myself of that." She understood. The man he'd been hadn't disappeared overnight. Sometimes she caught glimpses of him, when someone treated Daniel poorly at school, when a neighbor took advantage of their kindness, when news from the mainland mentioned violence in the world they'd left behind. His jaw would tighten, his eyes would go cold, and then he'd take a breath, remember where he was, remember what they'd built, and let it go. "I'm proud of you," she said. "For what?" "For choosing this, for choosing us." He turned to face her, cupped her cheek. "Easiest choice I ever made." They made love that night, slow and tender, reaffirming promises spoken and unspoken. Afterward, he held her close. "Marry me." She lifted her head. "What?" "Marry me. Officially. Under our new names, our new lives. Let's make this permanent." "It already is permanent." "I know, but I want it on paper. Want everyone to know you're mine." She smiled. "Possessive?" "Always." "Then yes." She kissed him. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were married a month later in a small ceremony on the beach. Daniel stood with them as witness. A handful of friends they'd made attended. The ceremony was in Greek, simple and beautiful. Constantine slipped a ring on her finger, nothing ostentatious, just a simple band of gold, and kissed her as the sun set over the water. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." And standing there, surrounded by people who knew them only as they were now, Elise felt something she'd never expected to feel again. Complete happiness. If stories like this linger in your heart long after they end, don't leave just yet. Like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below, and let the next story find you when the night grows quiet again. 5 years after they'd arrived in Greece, Elise woke to find Constantine already awake, staring at the ceiling. "What's wrong?" she asked sleepily. "Nothing." She propped herself up on one elbow. "Don't lie to me. Not after all this time." He sighed. "I had a dream. About before." "Bad?" "No. Just vivid. Remembered things I thought I'd forgotten." She waited, knowing he'd continue if he needed to. "I was thinking about my sister," he said finally. "About how she'd feel knowing what I became. What I did. Would she understand?" "I don't know." He turned to look at her. "But I think she'd be happy I got out. That I found you. That I got to have this." Elise took his hand. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" "The violence. Yes. The choices that led me there. Sometimes. But meeting you." He kissed her palm. "Never. Not even for a second." "Good answer." He smiled, pulled her close. "What do you want to do today?" "Something normal. Boring. Everything we've fought for." So they did. They had breakfast with Daniel, who was now 17 and planning to attend university the following year. They walked into town, bought groceries, stopped to chat with neighbors about trivial things. They spent the afternoon on the beach, swimming and reading and existing. That evening, they sat on their terrace watching the sunset, Daniel between them, all three of them comfortable in silence. "This is enough," Constantine said quietly. Elise looked at him. "What is?" "This. All of it. It's enough." She took his hand. "More than enough." Daniel glanced between them. "You two are being weird." They laughed. "We're always weird," Elise said. "Yeah, but like, extra weird tonight." Constantine ruffled his hair. "We're just grateful, that's all." "For what?" "For you. For her. For this life we somehow managed to build." Daniel rolled his eyes but smiled. Okay. Don't get all emotional on me." But later, when Daniel had gone to bed, Constantine stood at the terrace railing, looking out at the sea. Elise joined him. "What are you thinking?" "That I spent so many years believing I was cursed. That everyone I loved would be hurt because of me. And now I know that's not true. That love doesn't have to be tragedy. That sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to keep what matters most." She leaned against him. "We were lucky. More than lucky. We were relentless." She laughed softly. "That too." They stood there as night fell, as stars emerged one by one, as the world grew quiet around them. And Elise thought about the woman she'd been when they met. Broken, desperate, exhausted. She thought about the man he'd been. Dangerous, isolated, convinced he was beyond redemption. She thought about all the choices they'd made, the risks they'd taken, the battles they'd fought to get here. "Worth it," she whispered. "What?" "All of it. Every terrible, beautiful moment. It was worth it to end up here." Constantine turned her to face him, kissed her deeply. "Every moment from here on out will be worth it too. Promise." "Promise." And as they stood there under the stars, far from the violence and chaos that had brought them together, Elise finally understood what Constantine had been trying to tell her all along. Love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about easy choices or safe paths. It was about choosing each other, every single day, no matter what came before or what might come after. It was about building something real from the wreckage of who they used to be. It was about finding home in another person and defending that home with everything you had. She'd found that with him. Against all odds, against all reason, despite the darkness they'd both carried, she'd found home. And that was enough. That was everything. Years would pass. Daniel would graduate, would build his own life, would carry forward the love and strength they'd given him. Constantine would grow old beside her, his past fading into memory, into stories they'd tell on quiet nights. They would never be ordinary, but they would be happy. And in the end, standing on that terrace overlooking the sea, with the man she loved beside her and peace hard-won surrounding them, Elise knew one final truth. They'd made it, against every threat, every danger, every force that had tried to tear them apart. They'd survived, and they'd done it together,